ready because I'll go through that as part of the responses.
Okay.
Chair, the purpose of the report is to advise the committee of the outcome of the consultation process concerning the draft statement of licensing policy for 2021-2026, and to request the committee to make a recommendation to full council concerning approval of the publication of the draft statement as the City Council Statement of Licensing Policy 21-26. The committee notes the responses received during the consultation process into the draft statement of licensing policy, and that the committee recommends to the City Council that the draft statement of licensing policy 2021 to 2026 appended to this report at Appendix 1 be approved in accordance with the recommendations set out in Appendix 3, which I'll go through in a second. Under the Licensing Act 2003, the council has the council as licensing authority is obliged every 5 years to publish its statement of licensing policy, setting out the principles it will apply in exercising its functions under the Act. The current statement of policy will expire on the 7th of January 2021. At its virtual meeting on the 19th of October 2020, the Licensing and Gambling Committee resolved that the City Manager be authorised to carry out a formal statutory consultation on the City Council's draft statement of licensing policy, and that he report back to this committee the outcome of that consultation. Attached as Appendix 1 is the draft statement, and the consultation was done between the 6th of November and the 18th of December 2020. There's a copy of the consultation letter and questionnaire in the pack, Chair. This report informs the committee of all the relevant responses received to during the consultation process. Some of the responses were general in nature and did not address the proposed 8 amendments that we were looking at putting in the policy. Those responses which did address the 8 amendments have been extracted into the table in Appendix 3. The City Manager has carefully considered all the responses and provided his recommendation alongside the proposed amendments for the committee to consider. If I can just draw members' attention to Appendix 3, I'll go through each of the 8 proposed amendments. The City Manager is making a recommendation that we approve 7 of those amendments and don't approve 1 of them, based on the evidence that came back. So amendment number 1 would be the need for licence holders to be mindful of their role in preventing sexual offences and hate crime. The City Manager's recommendation is that it's recommended that the proposed amendment be included without alteration in the new policy statement. The amendment is considered entirely appropriate in order to comply with the licensing authority's duty to promote safety and the prevention of crime. The second amendment, Chair, was with regard to the steps which licence holders should consider in relation to deterring knife crime, the engagement of appropriate number of female door staff, and the provision of bleed packs and staff training in how to use them. Again, the City Manager recommends that these be included in the new draft policy. You can see on Appendix 3 the people that responded back. Give me a sec while I go through me list. Amendment 3, which is the one to be omitted from the policy, Chair. The licensing authority's view that the exceptional nature of the coronavirus pandemic should be reflected in a wider interpretation of the public safety licensing objective, thus expressly enabling the review of those authorisations held in respect of premises which are acting irresponsibly in not following government guidance aimed at limiting the spread of the disease. And it's recommended, Chair, that this proposal be omitted from the new policy statement. The amendments have been drafted at a time when the government had provided little to local authorities by way of specific powers to enforce compliance with COVID-19 guidance. However, this position has now changed as there are now various regulations which impose clear criminal penalties for non-compliance. Whilst the City Manager does not necessarily agree with the assertion that non-compliance with COVID-19 measures does not fall under the public safety objective, the issue is now academic, as the crime prevention licensing objective provides justification for reviewing the licences of any licensed premises which are not complying with the various COVID-19 regulations. Chair, anybody, before I go on to the next, is there anything anybody wants to say? Or do you want to wait till I go to the end? It's up to you.
Yeah. Go on, carry on.
No problem. Amendment 4, Chair, express reference to the need for licence holders to consider the safety of persons with all forms of disability. Again, City Manager agrees that this should be included in the new draft policy. Proposed Amendment 5, express reference to the possibility of a licence being reviewed where planning conditions concerning hours of operation are not being adhered to. It is recommended that the proposed amendment be included without alteration in the new policy statement. The amendment merely makes it clear to licence holders what the consequences may be if they choose not to adhere to the hours stipulated by any planning consent. The amendment does not encourage the planning authority to carry out enforcement using the licensing system. The amendment is considered entirely appropriate in order to comply with the licensing authority's duty to promote the prevention of crime and public nuisance. Amendment 6, reference to the list of model conditions published by the authority which applicants may wish to consider when drafting their applications. Again, City Manager would ask that this be included in the policy statement. As you're aware, Chair, we've drafted up on our website to assist along with our guidance notes. It's a list of conditions, model conditions that applicants, when they're applying for licences, can use. And it's an excellent document with a lot of information in, Chair. Amendment 7, replacement of references to the current special cumulative impact policies with reference to the statutory impact assessment provisions. It is recommended that the proposed amendment be included without alteration to the new policy statement. The contents of any cumulative impact assessments, once approved, will make clear the types of premises to which they relate. I'm missing one. Amendment 8, express reference to the ability of licensing authority to withhold from an applicant the personal details of a person who has made relevant representations. Again, it is recommended that the proposed amendment be included without alteration in the new policy statement. The proposed amendment is not considered to be unlawful. I can't remember whether I've missed 7 there. Robin, have I gone through the lot of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions for Andy? Well,
yeah, just in regard to the planning authority seeking a review, so that's going to be included in the policy, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I presume planning will be made aware of that and their ability to be able to bring about a review, because my experience of planning in terms of their coordination with licensing is, for instance, when I submitted a review of a premises licence in Woolton, I had to send that information through to planning, and their response to me was, why have you sent this to us? It's a licensing matter. So whilst planning was one of the authorities that needed to be consulted on the review, they didn't realise or understand that, and their response was, well, this has got nothing to do with us. And then, of course, in terms of what we do get sometimes is the terminal hours differ from licensing to planning. Well, then planning do also need to be aware now that they can put in a review and not simply say, oh, that's a matter for licensing. So I presume that they'll be made fully aware of this, will they, Andy?
I can assure you that they'll be made aware. I'll have a meeting with the relevant people and make them aware of what they can do, and obviously what they've always been able to do in relation to being a responsible authority under the Licensing Act 2003.
Pauline, did you want any questions?
No, sir, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Are we approving that recommendations? Those recommendations?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah.
Roy? Yeah. Roz? Where's Roz gone? Okay. That's approved. There's no any other business. So thank you for this morning. Thank you, Rob.